Today's lesson is Dialogue Focus. Let's enjoy some hot pot. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And we're getting closer and closer to the end of the year and closer to winter. I guess it's actually winter now. And, of course, during the winter, we want to figure out ways to warm up a bit, don't we, Helen?
That's certainly true. When the temperature goes down, we start craving or desiring food that will make us feel warm inside. And in Taiwan, the food that comes to mind for many people is hot pot. A lot of people enjoy eating hot pot all year, but perhaps more in the winter than in warmer weather.
Indeed, and I remember many years ago when I first came to Taiwan, somebody told me, oh, you've got to have hot pot. It is so good. And they took me to a hot pot restaurant, and I didn't think it was all that special, but I later realized that I didn't really use the proper sauce with it, so the food was quite bland. So I think a key to eating good hot pot is the sauce that you make from various ingredients, and we'll get to that as we continue with our lesson. And today we've got Luke, and he's hanging out with some of his friends, Evan and Ava, and they're going to be talking about hot pot, and someone suggests that they go have some. So let's find out what this is all about. Let's enjoy some hot pot. Let's listen to part 1, Sharing Comfort Foods.
Let's enjoy some hot pot. Sharing comfort foods. Luke is hanging out with his new friends, Evan and Ava, during recess. So, how do you guys like the food here in Taiwan?
It's really good. I especially like soup dumplings. They're so tasty.
I haven't tried much yet, but I've liked everything so far. I do miss some of the comfort foods I used to eat, though. You can't beat a bowl of hot chili on a cold winter day, or tomato soup with a grilled cheese sandwich.
Are those traditional winter foods in the States?
I don't know if I'd call them traditional exactly, but they're very common. We eat a lot of soups and stews during winter.
We do too. One of my mom's go-to winter dishes is carrot and ginger soup.
Well, have you guys tried hot pot yet? It's one of the most popular winter dishes here. If you eat a lot of soup back home, you'd probably like it. I'd also call it a comfort food.
No, I've never tried it.
Neither have I. What is it?
大家好，第一部分我们看到单字 recess， 这个字是名词，指课间休息或是休会期间，像是 My friend and I played volleyball during recess。我跟我朋友在课间休息时打排球。另外 recess 当作名词也有隐秘处或是藏身处的意思。例如 The aim of astronomers is to discover the recesses of the cosmos. 天文学家的目标是探索宇宙深处。或是 Mafias have recesses to protect themselves. 黑手党有藏身处来保护他们自己。接着我们看到动词 grill 指烧烤或是炙烤，像是 James plans to grill some steaks for his family this weekend. James 计划在这周末时烤些牛排给他的家人们吃。或是 The cook grilled hamburgers and hot dogs for the hungry children. 厨师炙烤些汉堡和热狗给肚子饿的孩子们。另外，这个字在文章中的用法为过去分词做形容词用，指烧烤的。举例来说 Grilled chicken breast is a favorite of bodybuilders. 烤鸡胸肉是锻炼肌肉的人的最爱。或是 The chef served grilled salmon fillets with a mango and red onion salsa. 厨师端上炙烤的鲑鱼菲力，配上芒果和红洋葱沙沙酱。
So in part 1 of today's dialogue focus, which is called Let's Enjoy Some Hot Pot, we are going to talk about sharing comfort foods. So before we talk about hot pot, let's look at the phrase comfort food, because this phrase has different meanings for different people depending on where you come from and what your favorite foods are. So for me personally, mashed potatoes is a comfort food because not only do I enjoy eating it, but it also makes me think of when I was a child, when my mother used to make it. So it's a very comforting food. It makes me feel calm when I eat it. Sometimes when I'm tired or when I just don't feel like cooking, I'll just make some mashed potatoes and then I'll eat it on the sofa in front of a TV show, and then it'll just make me feel really good.
Yeah, we basically eat food because we're hungry, but sometimes we eat food to feel better, and it could be psychological and it could be physical. Your description there sounds more psychological. It reminds you of earlier days and things like that. But indeed, you might feel cold and you might want to have some food to make you feel more comfortable, to warm you up. So indeed, we could describe hot pot as being a kind of comfort food. And Luke is hanging out with his new friends, Evan and Ava, during recess. Now, recess is a time in school that you get to take a break and usually go out on the playground and play around for 15 or 20 minutes or whatever. I guess Luke and Ava and Evan are a bit older than that. Maybe they're going to school someplace and they're taking a break from school, and now it's recess. They're taking a break and they're having a conversation.
So Luke asks Evan and Ava, so how do you guys like the food here in Taiwan? So Luke is curious about what Evan and Ava feel about food in Taiwan, whether they've gotten used to the types of food in Taiwan. And Evan replies, it's really good. I especially like soup dumplings. They're so tasty. And Ava replies, I haven't tried much yet, but I've liked everything so far.
Exactly. So we can kind of tell from this conversation that Evan and Ava are kind of new to Taiwan. So Luke has been here for a long time and he asked them, hey, what do you think of the food here in Taiwan? Do you like it? Are you used to it? And Evan likes it. He likes the soup dumplings. They're very tasty. They're delicious. But Ava hasn't really tried much, but she has liked everything that she has tried so far. And she says, I do miss some of the comfort foods I used to eat, though. This can happen, of course, if you go live in a foreign country. You won't have some of the foods that you're used to, some of those foods that made you feel happy before. So if she's from the USA, of course, she's probably talking about various kinds of American food that she can't get here in Taiwan.
Yes, and Ava says, you can't beat a bowl of hot chili on a cold winter day, or tomato soup with a grilled cheese sandwich. So for Ava, comfort food includes hot chili, which is a bowl of beans. It's usually made with beans that are red, and it's cooked for a long time so that beans become soft and you have this very kind of spicy flavor added to the bean because it's hot, so you add peppers to it. And that's really good for winter because it makes you feel warm inside. And another food that Ava really enjoys during winter is tomato soup with a grilled cheese sandwich. That is also a staple in the United States. So it's basically a tomato soup, which is a thick soup, and you accompany that with a grilled cheese sandwich. A grilled cheese sandwich is a sandwich with some kind of cheese inside. In America, it's usually cheddar cheese. And to grill the sandwich means to cook it on a metal surface over strong heat. Usually that's done over a stove. You can put it on a grill, and then you would flip the sandwich so that it's crunchy on the outside and gooey and soft on the inside because the cheese is melted. Or when you talk about grilling in the case of a barbecue, you could also be cooking the food on a grill, a surface with metal bars, and in that case you might be grilling steak or a burger on the metal bars.
Exactly. So these are some examples of American comfort food, and I've heard of these. People have different ideas about what to eat during the winter depending on where you're from in the US or Canada or wherever. And Luke says, well, are those traditional winter foods in the States? So if you talk about traditional food, that's food that people eat regularly. I guess some traditional food in the US would be hamburgers and pizza and fried chicken and stuff like that. But I'm not sure if we would consider tomato soup with a grilled cheese sandwich to be traditional.
Yes, probably regional. In some places, it might be traditional in certain states, but definitely not all over the United States, even though it's common, but I wouldn't call it traditional. So Ava replies, I don't know if I'd call them traditional exactly, but they're very common. So they're commonly eaten. It's very likely that if you go over to someone's house in the States, you might be served a grilled cheese sandwich, perhaps not accompanied by tomato soup, but it is pretty common. And she continues to say, we eat a lot of soups and stews during winter.
Right, and notice here, soup and stew are being used as countable nouns. Usually soup and stew are non-countable nouns. How much soup did you eat? How much stew did you eat? But in this particular case, if you're talking about different kinds of soup, then you can add an S to it. Just like if you're talking about different kinds of chocolate, you can add an S to it, and etc., etc. So yes, they eat a lot of different kinds of soup and different kinds of stew during the winter. And Evan says, well, we do too. We eat lots of soup, different kinds of soup, and different kinds of stew during winter. One of my mom's go-to winter dishes is carrot and ginger soup. So here we've got the phrase go to something. It's being used as an adjective here. That just means it's something that we often go to. We often rely on that. We often eat it.
Yes, for instance, I could say my brother Max is the go-to guy if you want to know about computers because my brother Max works in a computer store. So go-to can also be used to describe a person. And here Evan is talking about a dish that his mom used to cook often in wintertime, and that's carrot and ginger soup. Ginger, of course, is a type of root that has a very special flavor, and it's supposed to be very beneficial to the health, and it's often used in soups and also for stir-frying vegetables and for many Taiwanese dishes.
Okay, and then Luke says, well, have you guys tried hot pot yet? It's one of the most popular winter dishes here. If you eat a lot of soup back home, you'd probably like it. I'd also call it a comfort food. So yeah, hot pot is a kind of soup. It has all sorts of vegetables and meat in it. So I guess you could describe it as a kind of soup. Evan says, no, I've never tried it. And Ava says, neither have I. What is it? And we're going to find out what it is in part 2 when we talk about hot pot. Let's listen to their continuing conversation.
Talking about hot pot. Luke shares his passion for hot pot with Evan and Ava. Basically, hot pot is a big pot of broth that sits in the center of the table. Everyone cooks various ingredients in the broth, usually vegetables, dumplings, tofu, duck blood, and slices of meat. But you can make it with anything, really.
So, how do you go about eating it? Do you just put a bunch of stuff in the pot, wait for it to cook, and then serve it all up as a kind of soup?
Oh no, it's more like the broth is there to cook all of the ingredients. You can put whatever you like in the pot. Then once it's cooked, you take it out of the broth and serve it up. You don't cook everything at once.
Isn't that a little bland?
No, there's a dipping sauce. That's the best part. Everyone makes their own to suit their taste. I like mine spicy, so I add chili peppers. You dip the cooked ingredients in the sauce before eating them.
That sounds delightful. I'd love to try it.
Why don't you guys come to my place for dinner this weekend? I can teach you how to make it.
That would be great.
Yeah, count me in.
第二部分我们看到片语 go about， 常见用法为 go about 加名词或动名词表示开始点点点或是着手做点点点，像是 Dave wants to start a company on his own, but he's not sure how to go about it. Dave 想要自己开公司，但他不确定要怎样开始进行。或是 My boss doesn't care how I go about my job as long as I get results. 我的老板不在乎我用哪种方法做事，只要我产出结果就好。最后我们看到形容词 bland， 指清淡的或是枯燥乏味的。我们可以说 Without spices in our food, meals would be pretty bland. 食物或餐点少了香料后会变得相当清淡。 或是 The film was bland and lacking in drama and emotion. 那部电影枯燥无味，缺乏戏剧性与情绪。另外补充一个同义词 insipid, I-N-S-I-P-I-D, insipid, 指清淡的或是枯燥乏味的。例如 Lily always eats insipid food, such as boiled eggs to keep in shape. Lily 总是吃清淡的食物，像是水煮蛋来保持身材。或是 Mike is an insipid man who stays at home all the time. Mike 是个很枯燥乏味的人，他一直待在家。
So in part 1, Luke, Evan, and Ava are talking about comfort foods, and Luke, towards the end of the conversation, mentions hot pot, and Evan and Ava are curious. Ava didn't know what it was. So here in part 2, the three of them are going to start talking about hot pot. And Luke shares his passion for hot pot with Evan and Ava. He explains to them, basically, hot pot is a big pot of broth that sits in the center of the table. Everyone cooks various ingredients in the broth, usually vegetables, dumplings, tofu, duck blood, and slices of meat. But you can make it with anything, really.
Right, so these are some of the ingredients in hot pot. You've got the broth, which is basically the liquid. It's like soup without the stuff in it. I guess in some places, broth could be a kind of soup that has meat or vegetables in it. But to me, broth is just a special kind of liquid for the hot pot soup. And then you've got the ingredients, vegetables, dumplings, tofu, duck blood, etc., etc. But of course, they have different kinds of recipes, and people have their own preferred ingredients. And here Evan says, so how do you go about eating it? Yeah, what do you do to eat this stuff? And we've got the phrase go about, which means basically, how do you do this? How do you eat this stuff? What is the procedure for eating hot pot?
Yes, use the phrase go about usually to ask about something that involves a procedure or a process. So I could say something like, how do I go about opening an account at this bank? Or, how do I go about joining this club? In other words, what is the process? What is the procedure to join this club?
Okay, and Evan continues, do you just put a bunch of stuff in the pot, wait for it to cook, and then serve it all up as a kind of soup? So Evan's just kind of guessing here. You just put all of the ingredients in the pot, and then you wait for all of that stuff to cook, and when it's ready, you serve it all up. You take it out, you put it on a plate, and then you eat it. And he thinks, yeah, is it kind of like a soup? You eat it as if it were a soup?
And Luke says, oh no, it's more like the broth is there to cook all of the ingredients. You can put whatever you like in the pot, then once it's cooked, you take it out of the broth and serve it up. You don't cook everything at once. So Evan was under the impression that you just throw everything in the pot at one time, the vegetable, the duck blood, the meat, everything. And then once everything is cooked, you just scoop everything out. And Luke explains, no, the broth is actually always there. It's always kind of boiling or bubbling. And then you put the food in there one piece at a time, whether it's meat or tofu or vegetable. And once that is cooked, you take it out and you serve it. You don't cook everything at once. That is not the point of having hot pot.
And Evan says, well, isn't that a little bland? If something's bland, it doesn't really have a lot of flavor. I know that a lot of people go to America and they eat the food there and they go, oh, it's so bland. It doesn't really taste like anything. It's like eating the air or something like that. And food is bland if you don't have a lot of seasoning in it or a lot of spices.
That's right. So when you think of food that's not bland, you might think of Indian food or Thai food, because those types of food usually contain a lot of spices and a lot of, well, they're quite salty also. So yes, hot pot could be bland if you don't add the right sauce. So Luke says, no, there's a dipping sauce. That's the best part. Everyone makes their own to suit their taste. So one of the best things of hot pot is you get to make your own dipping sauce. And since everyone has their own taste, some like their sauce to be spicier than others and some saltier. It doesn't really matter what you like. You can do your own and you're not going to affect anybody else. So you can make your own sauce to suit your own taste.
Right, and to me, of course, that's what makes hot pot delicious. Everybody's going to have a different formula for these ingredients for this kinds of sauce. And Luke says, I like mine spicy, so I add chili peppers. You dip the cooked ingredients in the sauce before eating them. Yes, you use your chopsticks and grab a morsel of food. You dip it in the sauce. You put it in your mouth. You chew on it and, oh, yum, yum.
Yes, and here Luke says he likes his spicy. So spicy here, of course, means hot because he's added chili peppers to his sauce. And spicy is good when you're eating hot pot because that kind of contrasts the blandness of the food that comes out of the broth. And Ava says, that sounds delightful. I'd love to try it. So delightful means pleasant. That sounds pleasant. That sounds wonderful. And Ava would like to try hot pot too because she thinks it sounds great. And Luke replies, why don't you guys come to my place for dinner this weekend? I can teach you how to make it. So Luke obviously has an electric stove that he can use to prepare hot pot, and he's probably going to buy all of the ingredients and prepare the broth and invite Ava and Evan to come over and try hot pot.
So Ava likes that suggestion. That would be great. And Evan says, yeah, count me in. If you say count me in, that means, yes, don't forget to include me. I'm going to do that too, along with the rest of you. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Let's listen to Hanny, our beloved Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。在课文第一部分的对话里面， Luke 问他两位新朋友有没有吃过火锅，那么 Evan 就说他从来没有吃过， Ava 也是， Ava 就说 Neither have I。 那这是否定复合的用法，用来表达说我也从没吃过。这边我们就来学习以 nor 或者是 neither 来表达否定复合的用法哦。以 nor 或者是 neither 开头的子句呢，必须把助动词或 be 动词移到主词前面来形成倒装，那就会写作 nor 或是 neither 加上助动词或 be 动词再加主词，而这个用法呢，必须接在否定陈述后面。例如 Jane wasn't invited to the party, nor was her sister. Jane 没有受邀参加派对，她的姐姐也没有。我们再造个例句 Nick didn't have breakfast, neither did I. Nick 没有吃早餐，我也没吃。那这边要提醒同学们，在使用 nor 或是 neither 去表达否定复合的时候，有几个重点要注意。第一个 neither 和 nor 本身就带有否定意思，所以后面不用再加 not 就可以表达出也不怎么样的语义哦。第二个是由于课文对话里面 Ava 她是在附和别人说的话，所以她就直接用了 neither have I 去表达。那如果前方直述句和复合句都是来自同一位说话者，这时候就要特别注意咯。 nor 它是当连接词，所以通常就会用逗号把它跟前面的句子隔开。不过有时候你也有可能会看到 nor 前面加上连接词 and 或是 but。 而至于 neither 一般则是把它当作副词，所以如果前方有句子的话，我们就会用连接词或者是分号把它跟前面的句子隔开。像刚刚的例句，我们不是说我也没吃早餐吗？那这部分你就可以写作逗号 nor did I， 或者是分号 neither did I， 或者是逗号 and neither did I 等等不同方式来表达哦。好，那在课文第二部分的对话里面， Luke 提到火锅蘸酱是最棒的部分，他就说 Everyone makes their own to suit their taste。 每个人会自己做自己喜欢的蘸酱。好，句子里面用到 suit one's taste 去表达合某人的口味，符合某人的喜好。我们这边要顺便补充两个跟动词 suit 有关的用语。第一个Suit somebody fine 是指合某人的意，某人认为没问题。当你听到 That suits me fine 就相当于 It's fine with me. 我没问题。好，第二个呢 suit yourself 是表达随便你。suit oneself 就是表达依照某人的自己的意愿，而在口语当中 suit yourself 就是像中文说的随便你啦，它可以是带有幽默的语气，随便你啊，不跟我们去玩我们就自己去玩啊，或者是它有可能是不高兴的语气啊，随你便啊，像那种就看上下文去判断它的语气哦。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Grill. You can grill the steaks while I make the salad. Stew. My grandma makes a delicious beef and red wine stew. Ginger. When Trisha was sick, her mom made her a lemon, honey, and ginger tea. Spicy. South Korea is a great place to live if you like spicy food. Delightful. He writes delightful children's stories about talking animals.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.